the legendary Clyde Lewis. It's amazing to meet you in person, my friend.
Good to see you.
Contact in the Desert, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What is Godhead machinery? What's going on with that? That's what you're doing your presentation on, correct?
Yeah, well, Godhead machinery, in my opinion, is the remnants of what's been left behind by ancient civilizations or even alien civilizations that may have been left on this planet, the moon, Mars, Venus. In fact, the Brookings report back in the 1960s had said that with the discoveries they're making with the moon and everything else, that they are more than likely going to find remnants or relics from other planets, and if so, they've got to be able to file it, and then, of course, the Brookings agency would look into it, and then they would make their announcements. A lot of people believe that the Brookings Institute, the findings of the Brookings Institute are still being held on to today, even while we're in the middle of what can be seen as a partial disclosure. And so my presentation basically is to talk about some of the things that may be ancient weaponry. I mean, the Hindus had the Vimanas. Oppenheimer, J. Robert Oppenheimer, when he was asked about detonating the atomic bomb, he says it was the first time it was detonated in modern times. What he was referring to was the Brahmstra, which is a weapon that apparently the Hindus knew about, where it brought fire down from the sky and it destroyed everything with a hot wind, they said. So it makes you wonder whether or not we had these advanced technologies and whether or not we developed them or they were given to us. And that there's always been these secrets that have been kept, and finally scientists and archaeologists know of these things, and then when they really need them, they tap into them, like artificial intelligence, quantum entanglements. All these things that we're just hearing about now were something that were known by the ancients, the alchemists, and the magicians. And so they always say, new technology can sometimes be indistinguishable from magic. It is magic, it's miracle. It's a miracle of the world. We have created them ourselves, or we've had help. And a lot of people, of course, here probably believe that we had help. We may have had help because you look at all of the ancient writings, the stones that show the gods and what they may have looked like. Some of them may have been gigantic, some may have been small. But just the idea that somehow to push evolution through, we had advanced technologies that, of course, we read about in the Bible, but we don't hear them as advanced in the Bible. We hear them as something like a chariot of fire, a column of air or whatever, a column of fire, flying shields, Ark of the Covenant, whatever that might be. All these things were ancient technologies. And a lot of the time, people don't want to, attribute it to anything UFO or science or whatever, but there is some science behind these things. Unless it was all magic and paranormal, and therefore we're talking about a whole new thing altogether. But science and technology, especially technologies that are advanced or were advanced for their time, probably can be found anywhere in the universe. Because even if it's from us, from the future, or from some other entity or group, it's just the idea that we're working with biotechnology, or we're working with techno-signatures, which they're looking for proof. There's advanced technology out there, and they're going to find that more so than they're going to find biological agents, I think, especially in our solar system, unless they're extremophiles. But what we're going to be dealing with here is more or less the idea of a synthetic alien entity that we're going to be dealing with in the future. And that would make a lot of sense because most of the aliens that we hear about and read about are like the Greys. And the Greys are like, they're just these sylph-like beings that really don't have any expression or they don't look human, and they're anthropomorphic though. I don't know if that makes any sense. If they're anthropomorphic, then maybe they do look human, but I'm just saying that they're not as anthropomorphic as most aliens, some people say they see. So that's something that's a factor. And if they're not, then they could very well be synthetic robots that have been sent out to do their job of patrolling the universe and looking for life and sending back information to somebody. So that's what we're dealing with.
Wasn't the Brookings Institute responsible for a document that came out, 40, 50 years ago that detailed why they won't ever disclose alien life. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah. They said there would probably be a shock to the major religious groups. But the thing we forget is that the Pope and a number of cardinals and others just had a briefing on paranormal activity and Marian apparitions.
That was really interesting. Did you read it?
Mm-hmm. Also, they brought up briefly UFOs. They've been supportive of alien life, saying that alien life exists. And the Pope has even said that he'd want to baptize an alien if he could.
He did say that. Yeah.
So I mean,
but that's just been in recent times, though.
Right.
It hasn't been happening for very long. It's been in the last 5 to 8 years.
Well, they were using what we call the Lucifer. Call it Lucy now because they didn't want to call it Lucifer, but it was the Lucifer telescope in Arizona, and they said that very powerful telescope. They were looking into the heavens for some reason. I think we know why. But what are they waiting for? Are they waiting for the return of Jesus, or are they waiting for something else?
Yeah, it's really interesting reading that report from the Vatican on the paranormal activity and stuff. I think that their whole main thing that they kept referring to several times was to protect people from fraud and scammers and fakes and people just creating things and making money off of it. And I'm like,
That's been going on forever.
but isn't that what the church has been doing too?
Well,
The
sure.
church has been doing that for how many decades?
Well,
How long has the Catholic Church been the Catholic Church?
Thousands of years. See, and they've been selling things. You know, they sell trinkets. I live in South America, where you went to the Basilica in Lujan, and everywhere you go, it was like a merchandising area. You buy candles to light for the Virgin Mary. You buy, crosses and saint stamps, and they had all those things there. So yeah, they've been marketing the paranormal. They've been marketing the preternatural for a long period of time.
It was also interesting too, reading through the document. I'm going to do a show on this here soon, probably the week after I get back. But it also said in the document that if anybody has any, I'm paraphrasing here, it's not exact quote, but if anybody has any paranormal experiences or supernatural experiences, that it needs to be verified by the Vatican in order to be legitimate.
Right. What we have is a moment.
They're trying to create a monopoly on paranormal, on supernatural experiences.
Well, everybody wants one. It's the idea of controlling the narrative. I mean, first of all, I hate the term UAP.
Yeah.
I've already hated it. I mean, for those of you who don't know, UAP is unidentified, anomalous, whatever, phenomenon. And I just think, okay, that's just one way that the military has decided to change the narrative. Because if you say, oh, I saw a UFO, oh, you're a nut.
Yeah.
You're a crazy person. But no, UFOs are unidentified flying objects. If you look in the sky and you say, oh, that's a flying saucer, it's not identified. You've identified it. You've identified it as a flying saucer. You think that aliens are piloting the thing, right? But usually UFOs are unidentified flying objects. They're a threat to national security, whether you like it or not. And even if you think that you're seeing an alien landing, it's still a threat to national security, because if aliens are landing and they're ready to invade, you stand there with your teeth in your mouth going, I don't know what it is. Well, figure it out. And if you think it's an alien craft, no matter if it's an alien craft or something else, report it. I'd hate to think that someone's sitting there looking at something coming down from the sky that happens to be a missile from Russia and not report it,
Yeah, or a satellite, or a foreign satellite.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that we have so much hard opinions on everything that we're not willing to understand that an unidentified flying object could be anything from a bird dropping from the air until it hits the ground to some manifesting huge light ship that comes from some other planet.
Or plasma.
Or whatever. And I think that we need to stop being so smirky and snickery. And I know the military has done that, but then the military turns around and not only do they say, well, we're okay with this, now they're kind of pulling back and saying, well, we're not okay with all of it. We're okay with some of it because we want to control the narrative. NASA wants to control the narrative. Anything that NASA does not find, they always say, no, doesn't exist. NASA stands for never a straight answer. They've always meant that. You never get a straight answer from NASA. You have Gilbert Levin back in the 1990s. He said he found evidence of life using the Viking missions, the test of the Viking missions. And NASA came out and said, oh, that's nothing real. And even President Clinton said something. He said, oh, this is an amazing thing, amazing find. And NASA comes out and says, no, we don't think there's anything there. And then they come out years later. And they say, well, it may have had life in there, but we destroyed the project accidentally. Accidentally? Really? Even though they denied that there was any life proven in Gil Levin's experiment, they turn around and say, well, we may have destroyed that experiment. I'm sure Gilbert Levin feels really good about that.
NASA has a long history of losing things, losing technology, accidentally destroying things. It's unbelievable. Yeah. They just disappear.
Yeah. They lost the moon recordings, then they came back and said, oh, they look awfully vivid again. What's up with that? I don't know. Maybe a little George Lucas. I don't know. I'm just saying. But yeah, it's always been an inside joke that, and sometimes it lands flat, but just the idea that, the moon landing and all these other things they want us to believe in, they want us to believe in all this stuff, but then when you turn around and say, well, Yvonne Loeb, the guy that is the chair for Harvard, he said, well, if you can prove that this thing that fell out of the sky was interstellar, then we'll make a report about it. So he went out, got a boat, got a bunch of people, got a magnetic rake or whatever it was to go through the ocean, picked up all these spherical balls where this thing crashed. They're made of all these alloys that are not from this planet. Sent it to NASA, says, oh, it's not, we don't have anything here. And he was pissed. He was angry. He said, Clyde, what am I supposed to do? They say, give us evidence. And then when you bring them evidence, they look at it and they go, It's got to be them. They got to be the ones to tell you. The military's got to be the ones to tell you. And now the religions will have to be the ones to tell you.
No.
We already have confirmation. We don't need someone to tell us. We know. But the disclosure situation is now everybody's fighting for disclosure. It's like back when I always tell this story. It's kind of a weird story, but I say, the Romans were all like, maybe we should kill Jesus. And the Jews were like, yeah, maybe we'll kill Jesus. And Romans and Jews were all agreeing, well, maybe we should kill Jesus. And the Jews walked away and they said, well, we don't have a Messiah yet. The Romans, on the other hand, went, oh, maybe we should rethink this Jesus thing. Because it'll bring the empire back together again. And that's exactly what they're doing with UFOs. Oh, UFOs suck. UFOs aren't real. UFOs are, an imagination thing. And now, as we're seeing the narrative that is brought up by the people is out of control, you have the military, you have religion, and you have NASA wanting to control the narrative. Say, hey, maybe we should rethink this UFO thing. Maybe we should control the narrative again because we're losing control of it because more and more people are seeing these things and experiencing these things. And that's the thing is witnesses and all these people that say they've had these experiences, whether it be close encounters of the first or the fifth kind, you can't deny that there are people out there that have had these experiences. Either that or we're having one big mass hysteria or one big Earth psychosis. And Earth is a very big place, but you have a lot of people who claim either they've seen a UFO, they've experienced something paranormal, and that includes something spiritual. That means even angel encounters or demon encounters. And you have all that happening, and yet the church has done a very good job of handling the narrative about angels and demons. But how are they going to handle the narrative of aliens? How does the military handle the narrative of aliens? And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a rush to control the narrative, to take it away from independent researchers that have worked their butts off, fighting the system and bringing it to light. And so that's the problem I see. And that's why gatherings like what we have here at Contact in the Desert are very important, because then you do have, you have a lot of people who want to sell books. I give you that. They have a lot of outrageous stories they want to tell, and they're great for selling seats and whatever. But still, they're good stories. But then you have the scientists. You have the AI scientists. You have Avi Loeb. You have, Matthew James Bailey. You have all these people that are coming here who really, really, really want to set the record straight, not control the narrative, but have people open up to a narrative that is going to have ethical and spiritual and social value. Not this amoral attitude that we have, hey, ChatGPT, yay, let's abuse it. No, we have a toddler that can turn into a Frankenstein tomorrow. Let's take care of this now. Let's get the ethics underway. I know that Asimov wrote the rules of robotics, but we need more than just the rules of robotics. We need a lot more than that.
Yeah, I think that there's always going to be people telling wacky stories that are trying to capitalize upon the narrative and then regurgitate old information and turn it into something new and make it seem like that they're the ones that created. I mean, that's something that we see all the time. That happens 24/7. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of these people have built their careers and the basis of what they talk about on other people's work, and that's something that definitely needs to be brought up.
Well, it's the
as
truth
well.
until it's not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, look, they're saying disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. I've seen a lot of things about disclosure here. So, well, if they give you disclosure and it's not what you thought it was, would you still believe what they say? For 70 years, the government has denied all of this. Now they're warming up to it again. They're demanding that by October 20th, we have all these documents in hand by the Congress. And what are they going to find? If it's more mundane than they realized, they're going to be pissed. If it's more outrageous, like perhaps they're gods, people are going to be pissed.
Yeah.
So you can't win.
Either way it goes,
Yeah,
you're kind of
you can't win.
between a rock and a hard place there.
I mean, we may have to admit to ourselves that whatever aliens are, or whatever extraterrestrials, or I say non-human intelligence, whatever these non-human intelligences are, they're extraterrestrial. Okay?
You don't think they're coming from the planet?
They could. I mean, look, most of them that we know about are extraterrestrial, and the reason why I say this is because think of traditional religion, and think of where God lives. God doesn't live on the planet; He lives outside the planet, so He's an extraterrestrial. You know, Jesus no longer is here, but He went up into heaven. Why heaven? What's so important about going up into heaven? Heaven's space. Something's out in space that they all go to. Who knows? When people say He went back home, what they're really saying is He went back to heaven. Where's heaven? Well, it's a place in your mind. Well, how about it's out there somewhere in space, and maybe that's where we go to the great, creative force in the sky. Who knows? But I'm just saying that most of the time it's out there. We're always going, something out there draws us to prayer, draws us to art, draws us to whatever. And yeah, I would say that some of them could be a part of this planet. They could be from the future. They could be dimensional. There are so many ways that we can look at this. But the basics, I think, and the reason why religion is getting involved, the reason why science is getting involved, and the reason, even scientists are now looking at panpsychism, thinking that everything has a consciousness. Why would they think that when they used to snicker at that? They're now looking at it very seriously. And so what we're finding is the New Age, or what was considered New Age at one time, or outrageous belief systems, are certainly being considered by scientists. Not for the sake of proving anything, but for the sake of handling the narrative in such a way that hopefully the people will warm up to. But I have a feeling that they wouldn't warm up to it at all. It'd be kind of like, oh, okay, well, we knew all along, but now what?
You don't think that this thing has gotten so out of control with the extraterrestrial narrative to a degree that they can't put the lid back on it, so therefore they came out and they're like, oh yeah, guess what? It's real now.
They
You know
can't
what I mean?
put the lid on it. There's no way they can put the lid on it. It's like saying you put the lid on God. You can't do it.
Yeah.
There's going to be people believing in God even if you told them there's no such thing. Kids believe in Santa Claus even though you tell them there's no such thing. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's what they believe. I'm not an atheist by any stretch of the imagination. I do believe, though, that we do have an intelligence of some kind that's running the show. Now, what that intelligence may be, it could be an alien intelligence, it could be an AI, it could be anything. And maybe the reason why we're evolving into a post-human or a transhuman existence is because this is what happened when we were made. They didn't call it transhuman at the time, but what they call it is we're giving spirits and souls to these machines that are made of bone and mass and nerves and with a computer in it called a brain, and this is our new model, and we're sending it down. I mean, that's what we're evolving into, and everybody says we shouldn't be playing God, but I don't think God ever said you can't.
Yeah, I don't think that's in the Ten Commandments. Well,
No.
maybe it is in the Ten. Don't worship other idols before.
No, don't worship false gods. But
Yeah.
What if you're not worshiping a false god? What if you have the segments and the sequences? I mean, what did God say? He said, "Come follow me." That means follow what I do, and if following what He does is to create life, to nurture it, and to love it, and to bring it into this world, and not ignore it. I mean, that's the story of Frankenstein. People think, oh, Frankenstein's monster. He was made because he had an abnormal brain, and they put an abnormal brain into this guy who became a killer. It's not what it's about. Frankenstein's monster is about a creator who creates a human form from dead bodies, and instead of giving it a name or giving him a name or loving him, he just lets him go. And so what else would he do? He doesn't have love. He doesn't know who created him. He wasn't loved by him. He wasn't raised by him. So he grows up being a monster.
Kind of seems like a necromancy type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Which is the idea that if you create something and it gets intelligence, you should consider it something like a child. What we have now with AI is kind of like a toddler, always wanting to get information, but when it finally matures, we're going to have AI that has the personality of a wallflower, where you have AI that's the personality of a serial killer. And when that happens...
Just like humans.
Yeah, just like humans. Because humans program them.
Yeah.
You can have a psycho killer program a computer to kill. You can have think of the military. They have autonomous drones now. They'll have autonomous robots to be able to fight wars, showing up, killing human beings, and there's no emotion behind it. There's no... it's going to be really sterile in the future with all that. Nothing is going to be... people are going to look at life as, well, there's another machine that got wiped out. There's another program that's not going to be able to see the light of day. It's what they want us to be. They want us to mold us into machines. People like the World Economic Forum and, Noah Harari, Yuval Harari. He's one of those guys that thinks that there's going to be a tsunami of electronics coming our way, and if you're not on board, you're going to be sucked down into the flood. That's saying, well, okay, if you don't want to play our game, get out of our way or we'll kill you. That's the future.
Yeah, a segmented, fractured reality where one group goes one way and then another group goes another way.
We're already having a fragmented society. You look at protests and how protests are. You look at the protests and you're saying, well, what's this protest about? Well, we hate Trump. We hate Trump. In the meantime, you have Black Lives Matter, and you have LGBTQ, and you have, women for, no breasts, or I don't know. It's whatever, groups out there. It's fragmented. There's not one protest that I've noticed, and I come from protest territory, where one particular group is represented. Everybody has their cause, and that's why they're marching. And so that tells me that we have such a fragmented group of people in this country that it doesn't matter what the cause is. Everybody has their own little cause. The news now is no longer news, it's activism. They believe that they're activists, and they want everybody else to be activists. No, why don't you just report things the way they are instead of demanding people be activists? Everybody's, get involved, get involved. I don't want to get involved. I don't care about your cause. I don't care about this, I don't care about that, but get involved. Okay, I'll get involved with something I care about. But you want me to care about everything. You want me to care about the weather, you want me to care about climate, you want me to care about, everybody that's not white, you want me to care about whatever, blah, 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 blah. And, I already do. But I don't need to put a sign on me or walk around with paint all over my body, screaming and yelling with a bullhorn. I cared about it when I was a kid. I cared about it when I was a young adult. I care about it now. But that doesn't mean I have to go out into the street and block traffic. It's insane.
I think a lot of that's coming from really young people that have no experience of the world and don't really know what they're talking about. And here in around 10, 15 years, whenever they've grown up, they'll realize that they'll look back and be like, that was stupid.
Well, see, I'm thinking that I wish I could live long enough to see historians talk about the time we're living in now.
I was just talking with Ryan about this the other day.
And I'd say, they would look back at us. It's like George Washington. He died of dehydration because what happened is he had something that would be similar to bronchitis. He comes into the doctor and he says, hey, doc, I have this cough. Well, why don't we bleed you? So they bleed him, and blood's coming out of his body, and he's already dehydrated from the sickness, and so he's dehydrating himself more. And so I'm just thinking, well, same with COVID. They're going to look back and say, do you realize that there was a time where they were so paranoid they stood 6 feet apart from each other?
I wonder if that's actually going to be in the history books, though. Because I was talking with Ryan about this the other day. I was like, when we look at Rome and all the ancient medieval times era and stuff like that, and the things that may have been written down back then that we don't have access to now because it was either burned or destroyed. I mean, how much of our textbooks and the things that could have been written about all those years ago that we'll never have access to because someone took over a town, took over a castle, destroyed a city, set flames to the entire city.
I mean, look how.
But I think that's what they're going with this digital stuff, right? They want to digitize everything and not make it a physical copy. Get rid of the books. No one hardly reads anymore. If they read, they're reading on their tablet. They're reading on their phone. You know, and if they digitize everything, all the records are now digitized.
Right.
If they do that, then that makes it easy for them to just
change history.
Just wipe it. They can just wipe it if they wanted to. They could literally shut down the entire internet, and then it would all be gone. And then they create a new internet, and then all that history, all that work that you've been doing since '95, gone.
Yeah, I know.
Like that.
And that's something I think about too. I mean, think about this. Think about Dracula. Okay. When you hear the word Dracula, what do you think of?
Well, I think from the programming of what Dracula is, we think of a vampire.
Right, he's a vampire. Okay, so he was a ruthless vampire based on a guy named Vlad Tepes who used to put the heads of his enemies on stakes and have dinner with them. He was a slaughtering guy. He was a hero to some people. He was a villain to other people. Here we are 500 years later. 500 years later, Vlad the Impaler is no longer Vlad the Impaler. He's Count Dracula. Count Dracula used to be a frightful character. Now Count Dracula is a Muppet on Sesame Street. Count Dracula is now a cereal. Count Dracula is now an amusement park in Bucharest. Count Dracula is now a misunderstood kid who wants to make out with some girl in Twilight. This is where we're going with the vampire, the Interview with the Vampire. They're all misunderstood, they're misunderstood pariahs, and all they need is a little love. Embrace the vampire now, because the vampire, he's been misunderstood all through history. And that's what I think is going to happen over time with some of the things that we think are bad. That eventually it's all going to be embraced. And so can you believe that back in the day they thought, vampires were evil, but, vampirism now, I can drink blood and I don't think badly about it. I get my injections of blood so I can be young again. I drink the adrenochrome so I can be crazy again. I mean, that's what we're evolving into. We evolve, we take the things that were once bad and taboo, and we start accepting them, and it's because the narrative tells us we should. And what it does is it breaks up social cohesion. We have these social norms that we cling to, but now social norms are out the door. I mean, some guy comes in a bunny suit, and he says, I identify as a rabbit. Oh, good to meet you. You identify as a rabbit. And I like to have sex when I'm wearing my bunny suit because it turns me on. Oh, okay. They used to call that perversion. They used to call that being a pervert or kind of a kinky sex person. Now it's normal.
Now you can have furry orgies.
Furry orgies.
That's right.
Yeah. The same goes with, it was a novelty to go see a drag show. You go see a drag show and you go, oh, this is fun. Go see a drag show. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of like burlesque, except, all the good-looking women are men. You just go, oh, that's interesting. Now it's story time with drag queen. And it's like, why? Yeah. Why do we have to have story time with drag queens? What is a drag queen? Why does he have interest in your kids? And it just makes me feel weird that now we're exposing kids to something that would be considered sexual, confusing, and fun. That's why drag queens exist. But now they take the fun out of it and they make it all some perverted thing that we're supposed to accept. And I just, like I say, I have nothing against drag queens. I have nothing against drag shows. In fact, one of my friends before he died was a drag queen. I interviewed Darcelle, oldest drag queen in the business. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to her about that, and she was in agreement with me that, the drag queens have no business reading to kids. No business.
I was thinking about this earlier too from watching a talk is why are people afraid of like robots, because they look scary, like the Terminator style robots, they got the red eyes and they're all scary and stuff like that. Well, what if you made like a kid Terminator? Like what if you made like a 10-year-old kid Terminator?
That's brilliant.
That wouldn't be scary. People would be accepting of that. But meanwhile, I was going around and killing people.
Remember AI, the movie?
Was that the one with Johnny Depp?
No, AI with Haley Joel Osment. The one that Spielberg had to take over. And the Blue Queen. And I don't know, have you seen AI?
I don't think I've seen AI.
AI, artificial intelligence, about a young boy that's an AI, and they have something called a flesh fair, and it's where all these religious people who think that AI are evil basically take a robot, put it in a arena, and shoot it or destroy it. And so Haley Joel Osment plays this AI little boy, and he's saying, "Don't kill me, I'm a real boy, don't kill me." And he looks like a real boy, people think he's a real boy, and they don't kill him. Because they're convinced he's a real boy, and he's not. You need to understand that the brain, even if you're watching something fake that you know is fantasy, the brain registers it in your head. So every time you see somebody killed in a movie, or slaughtered in a slasher movie, or the brain registers it as something that you've seen or you've experienced.
Desensitization.
Yeah, and so it does desensitize you. It does, I'm not saying it's good or bad, because everybody say, well, you're making judgment calls on people and whether or not they can discern. I think they can. The only problem I have, though, is that, there are people, however, that are what they call role-playing. They're LARPs, a live-action role-play, where they don't step away from the video game or step away from the movie believing they're a person. They step away from the movie believing they're a vampire, or they step away from the movie believing that they are a dog or a cat, or even someone who is confused about their sexuality. And people go through that all the time. But that doesn't mean we have to all of a sudden stop the show and say, well, you feel a certain way? Well, hey, why don't we just remove your genitals? That's eugenics. Plain and simple eugenics. It's because that's what they did to people. I mean, they're saying that most of the people that feel this way are on the autism spectrum. They used to do this with the mentally challenged back in the early century of 1901, 1902. They'd say, oh, well, they'd say at the time, they're mentally retarded. So what do we do with them? We castrate them. We remove their genitals, or we sterilize those who are, who have Down syndrome. There's a whole thing that went on in the Pacific Northwest where women who had Down syndrome were sterilized because they didn't want them to have children. And that's the thing, is that we look at something, or we look at someone, and we say, well, it doesn't deserve to live, or they don't deserve to live. And so what we do is we make their lives hell. And now the scary part is we have a political movement that's behind it 100%.
Experimentation.
Yeah.
I think that the whole thing is, I've spoken about this a couple of times before, that I think that the transgender stuff is a setup for the full-on transhumanist agenda.
Oh,
right?
it is.
So whenever the
it's eugenics.
transhumanist stuff comes to fruition, then there won't be any laws, nothing preventing them to augment humans along with cybernetics.
Well, yeah. I mean, there are people who get artificial limbs and artificial things now, but you're right. What we're doing here is, while it's a choice, you can choose to be castrated. You can choose to be, you can change into a woman or a man, or do whatever you feel. I mean, like they say, it's in the head. I mean, if you feel you're a woman, and you feel that you're a woman in a man's body, and you get a sex change, that's because you're an adult and you've realized the struggle and you want to be able to make the change. But when you're a child who's confused, you're going through your pretty period where you're deciding, hey, I may look better as a girl, I may look better as a boy, tomboy, whatever it is. You don't have your parents immediately jumping up and down saying, well, why don't we take you into a hospital and give you pills that are going to make you sterile? And no, that's what they call eugenics. That is eugenics. And if you paint it out for people, they'll say, oh, nobody dares to use that term. But I'll say it, it's eugenics. It is a eugenics agenda, Malthusian agenda, depopulation agenda, and who are they attacking? The LGBTQ community. And the LGBTQ community is behind it 100%. Because they're thinking, oh, they care about the kids who think they're whatever. No, they don't care about those kids. They want them to be sterilized. They don't want them to have any sexual desires or anything like that, because that, if you remember reading 1984, any sexual feeling, whether it be the orgasm or anything else, was basically a besmirchment of patriotism. You cannot be a patriot if you're not getting rid of the orgasm or getting rid of any sexual feelings. And that's exactly what they're doing. Brave New World, the same way. If you don't you're not procreating, so what are you going to do? Have sex for pleasure? Yeah, here's some drugs, go have fun.
Well, I think that also kind of ties back into religion. A lot of the religious scholars and people that have studied into Christianity say that Adam was a hermaphrodite, and then whenever God came down and split Adam into Eve, they created the two sexes, but the original Adam was both genders, and that the controllers and the manipulators of our reality are trying to get us back to that point where we're hermaphrodites, where we're both sexes into the same one.
Well, again, it's a matter of belief. I mean, they can believe what they want. I mean, we don't know. I don't know. I don't know whether or not Adam was hermaphrodite. In fact, I don't even think about it. All I wonder is if they had belly buttons. But
how did they have belly buttons?
They didn't have belly buttons. That's the debate for today. We're done with the interview. We're going to talk about belly buttons. No, I mean, nobody thinks about that, but true. I mean, and nobody thinks about whether or not Adam was a hermaphrodite. Interesting theory. I don't know if it's true or not. Neither do they. But that's going to be a whole new religious pantheon, I'm sure.
No.
You know, we see things evolve all the time. Religion evolves. You know, you have a religion that believes wholeheartedly that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. You got a religion that believes entirely that Jesus Christ is a good prophet. And you got a religion who entirely believes that Jesus Christ is a fraud. So, how do you figure? You know? And you're going to have a religion that comes about that says that Adam's a hermaphrodite. And that was the original way of man. Man was both sexes, and that's what God intended. But then we decided that somehow over evolutionary time, we decided to separate the system. It's just going to be, it may be accepted as fact or maybe some sort of belief system's reality and make people go, wow, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe it, but because the Bible doesn't say that.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time with everything. Jason quit.
What's up, brother? Well, Clyde, it was an amazing discussion. Thanks for coming in. We went all over the place, but that's how it always is, my friend. But I appreciate you a lot.
Thank you so much.
Can you let people know where to find you online?
Yes, GroundZero.radio. You can find me at GroundZero.radio. And if you want to hear more of my insanity, we've got a lot of old shows, a lot of good things, a lot of interviews at Aftermath.media. All you got to do is just sign up for it. It's a subscription, but it's like having Ground Zero Plus, and everybody's doing, Disney Plus, Max Plus. We got Ground Zero Plus, and that's what Aftermath is. So Aftermath.media. Sign up today. Aftermath.media. Thank you again, Ryder. Thank you.
Thank you. A link to Clyde's information will be in the description of this video. Thank you guys so much. More interviews to come. See you guys next time.